Olá a todos e a todas. Vamos começar o nosso evento no dia de hoje. Eu vou começar em português e depois vou mudar para inglês, que nós temos dois pesquisadores convidados. Vou explicar um pouco qual que é a iniciativa desse circuito de vídeos e apresentações que nós estamos construindo em torno do tempo, compartilhando caminhos na construção da carreira acadêmica. A ideia dessa série de vídeos é basicamente pesquisadores em diferentes estágios da carreira dividir suas experiências, frustrações, expectativas, resultados, sobre construção da sua identidade como pesquisadores e pesquisadoras e também dos seus resultados de pesquisas e seus desenvolvimentos. Então eu vou começar agora mudando para inglês. Hello everyone, my name is Leonardo Gomes. I'm professor at the University of São Paulo from the Business Administration Department. Today we have a privilege of having two very promising young researchers, Henry Lopes and Magdalena. They are from Jönköping University in Sweden. The talk today is quite different from the traditional talks at the Observatório da Inovação e da Competitividade, because today we're going to discuss basically the challenges, the frustrations, and of course the career development of two very promising researchers in innovation entrepreneurship at the Jönköping University, Sweden. So we're going to start by Henry Lopes. Thank you very much for being here. The idea is to have a very informal conversation. You have also Magdalena. Then we're going to perhaps switch the person here, because we're going to see you have a very different presentation today. Very different keynote speakers. So thank you very much for being here, Henry. And the center of stage literally is yours.
Thank you so much. Shall I use that microphone or this one? Yeah. Try it. Hello? Yeah, you can hear me with this one. Well, again, this is a pleasure for us to be here. And it is also a challenge for us to really think about our past and try to help some people on following some of the things that we have done, but also tell some of the things that probably they could avoid. And as you say, it's really a conversation. And then you can obviously challenge us with some of our insights. And obviously, I would like to start saying that there is no recipe. Everyone has to find its own way. I remember the analogy provided by my former supervisor at the SADA Business School, who was telling me that doing a PhD actually is like a level of maturity. And then he uses the analogy of the American Indians, who particularly for men, when a child wanted to become a teenager or an adult, they were bringing the man at night in the middle of the desert, and he had to find his own way back home. And I will say the research and the academia is like that. You have to find your own way. There is no perfect way to go back to your home, to your interest. So today we have this presentation. We use this very general title, Building an International Academic Career. And as Leonardo said, we are two assistant professors at Jönköping International Business School. And I don't have a presentation about my background, but because you can Google that. I just probably want to emphasize that, I am originally from Bolivia, but I've been almost 20 years outside Bolivia. I go to visit my parents. But after I studied my bachelor in Bolivia, I went to Germany where I did my MBA. Then I moved to the US when I was working on consultancy. And then I moved to Spain to do my PhD, and currently I live in Sweden. So it has also been a period of discovery of what I'm really interested in. And it continues, because this is a journey, and this is not just a final goal or a final point that you want to reach. So a little bit of who we are. This is a map for those of you who might think, okay, what is Sweden, and how is Sweden located geographically, and where do we come from? You can see really I'm Henry. I'm originally from Bolivia, very close to Brazil. A couple of hours, I think it's just 2 hours flying from Sao Paulo. Then our next speaker is Magdalena. She's originally from Poland. And suddenly, both of us are working now in Jönköping in the south part of Sweden. And Sweden is a country that has a small number of population, I will say, 10 million inhabitants, but it's considered among the most innovative countries in the world according to some rankings. So if you probably do not know too much about Sweden, you might know about these companies. Obviously, IKEA, for different reasons, they have not been able to open up a subsidiary in Brazil, but they've been trying to do that. But it's also about the setting that happens in Brazil and probably the setting that we have in Sweden and in other countries. Obviously, another example is Volvo cars. Then you can think about Spotify, you can think about Ericsson, Husqvarna, Electrolux, ABB, and multiple number of companies that are also present in Brazil. So I have learned actually from all of these years that I've been in Brazil that for Sweden, the second most important market is Brazil. And the most important market is obviously the Chinese market. So that tells you a little bit about the relevance of Brazil for Sweden and for Swedish companies. Moving on a little bit to the topic of today's conversation, which is about this journey. And this is just a visual representation of what it really entails probably to do a PhD and to go through an academic career. So you normally decide to do a PhD, and I'd really encourage you to do a PhD, not because you want to be a consultant, not because you want to earn money, not because you want to do, I don't know, whatever reason. You want to do research for a bigger reason. My reason was actually to try to help companies to be more efficient, because in that way they will be able to help all their own employees to be successful, and maybe they will generate other companies. They will generate growth, and for me, growth was a way to overcome poverty. As I'm from Bolivia, I have seen a lot of poverty, and that was my real motivation to start a PhD. Initially, I wanted to do my PhD in change management, but when I started, there were some strong suggestions to do more in innovation, and I saw the relationship between change management and innovation. Then, moving on, the small circle that is in blue is defining a research topic. I will get back to this because this is really important on what do you want to investigate and how you want to do it. And definitely we'll get back to you in a minute with this, with some insights on how did I define my research topic and how did I see myself in these very competing settings of research. You are normally this small fish in a very, very long sea, and you want to be relevant, but you are just a small fish in this. And I will tell you a little bit of my story. Then after that, then there comes a moment of celebration that you think is the thesis defense. So it took me 5 years and a little bit more to do it, almost 5.5. But in the last year and a half of my PhD, I was also working as an innovation consultant for Atos, and that also led me to realize that I didn't want to become a consultant, even though I thought it was a good path to implement changes to help companies to go. I realized that was not of my interest. But so after I defended my dissertation in 2012 at ESADE, then I got the opportunity to work at Jönköping Business School or Jönköping University under the Department of Business Administration. And then I had the great pleasure of working with Professor Fredrik Tell, and he was definitely a mentor for me. And I will get back to you in a minute about this, because this is also important, and that's where you see this green dot on search for a mentor. And obviously, as a young scholar, you need to recently graduated, you feel that you are on the top of the world, but really you are directly or indirectly requested to publish. And the more impactful the journal, the better. But it's also a long process, and it's a very difficult decision when you don't know if you will get a job, you don't know if you will get tenure. But you know that if you want to get tenure, if you want to get promoted or hired permanently, you need to publish. So sometimes you need to also risk. Do I go for an easier journal that might accept my papers, or do I go for a more difficult journal where I might have very small chances to get published? Sometimes you talk about 5% of good papers. And then you say, well, I'm putting all of my risk on the most challenging task. And that's really very worrying and very concerning and for a young scholar. How do I get published? How do I get recognized? Moving on, so then it's also, after that, I think I've been being more involved on outreach, particularly in Brazil. I've been visiting a lot of the Brazilian and Swedish subsidiaries in Brazil. I've been talking to companies on how do they do research, how do they coordinate R&D activities. I've been presenting then some of my findings at the Swedish Chamber of Commerce here in Brazil, and I'm receiving great feedback. Now I'm working on some of my papers on how did the Brazilian economic crisis, affected their R&D activities. It was really sad to see that in some companies, I visited them in 2012, and it was like 100 people working. 3 years later, you enter the same environment, the same office space, and there is only 3 people working, and most of the lights are turned off. And then you really think, okay, maybe with my research, I will be able to help these companies to, in the future, overcome these difficulties of economic crisis, because we know that economic crises occur continuously. I also been involved in some outreach activities in Sweden, talking with companies, because you learn from them. You learn a lot when you interact with companies, and I think that's something that you do greatly. And a lot of your work is talking with the company. So I really recommend to do these outreach activities. Moving on is academia obviously forces you to do other things, which is sometimes you might think less pleasant, but they pay off. I mean, let's start with the administrative activities that you normally have to do. You might feel that they are unnecessary. You might feel that they are boring. You might feel that they push you from your research. But it's also about trying to shape and influence your organization. And maybe you are not involved in this. Maybe your ideas or insights are not important, but you don't do everything for a positive outcome. You do it because you want to learn and you want to become relevant. And funding, of course, the possibilities of getting funding are decreasing all the time. But I would say that maybe now it's equally difficult to get published or to get funding. But when you get funding, you have the chance to do new things that you're very interested. I had also the great pleasure to collaborate and learn from very good scholars on how to do funding. When I was also at Atos in Barcelona, I was writing research proposals all the time to attract funding. So this is, I think, also what universities are putting a lot of attention, even though they will probably tell you, no, you need to publish. But they also, what will make you different is when you have some funding, or you manage to attract some funding. It could be even a small funding, it could help to signal that you have some proficiency and experience. If I want to move on, then I'm probably the most important, and in the current stage of my life, being happy and being fulfilled, because that's what keeps you going through all the difficult periods. You have managed to publish all your research that might come from your doctoral dissertation. You might have already achieved some level of maturity. You might be starting to be recognized, but you might also have missed a lot of good moments and a lot of good opportunities to spend time with the people that you want to spend the time, your family, your friends. And that is, I think, the most important part of this small journey. And it's, I think, the most necessary is to be really happy and to be fulfilled. What I'm doing makes sense for society. What I'm doing will influence others' life. And after that, you might think, okay, do I go for tenure, which is called associate professor in a lot of developed countries or the Anglo-Saxon countries? You go for an associate professorship, where you might have to go again to start the process of searching for a new topic, trying to get funding, trying to get a different set of networks, trying to be now the mentor of other people. So, and today I just want to drive you through that journey that I've been through in this through all these steps. So let me move on to some of the things that I think were important. Heroes versus mentors. So I think it's important to have both. So a hero is a person that you really admire for what she or he has done. Might be a very successful scholar, might be someone that you don't know, but you admire because of his or her achievements. I had the great pleasure to collaborate. So most of my research has been on open innovation. And I had the great pleasure to collaborate with Henry Chesborough, who has been named as the founder of the field of open innovation. And then his closest co-author was my PhD supervisor, who is Wim van Haverbeck. So he has been very helpful on guiding me on how to do research and where to do, how to get some data, and also granting me access to different sources of information. I would say my most important research in the two journals has been facilitated or enabled by his contacts and his wisdom. But I think it's not sufficient to have them because sometimes you are detached from them. They are not necessarily close to your everyday life. And that's why I think it's important to have a mentor. Someone who know you for who you are and who do not necessarily care about if you do mistakes, if you are sometimes not intelligent in your comments. Is someone who will, like your parent, help you to move ahead in this career, and who also understands that you cannot jump or run a marathon on the first day that you try it. Definitely for me, that person was Frederick Tell. It's a professor now in Uppsala. He was the one who invited me to go to Linköping. And I think he fulfills all of these criteria. Like, you know them very well. They are wise and realistic about the game on publishing and perish. And they probably say they will push you to do new things. It's obviously interesting and to have more, seek more if you can. I think I could name a couple of scholars who have been very influential for me. Also, my other supervisor that I had, who was Jonathan Wareham, he was probably not in the field of innovation. He was more in innovations, information systems. But I also admire him because of his academic career and his devotion to family. For him, family was first, and then was academia. And you also need to know about these things. Sometimes we tend to see these scholars that have published a lot as the stars, as the ones that can do everything. And so, but in my case, it was like, no, there are some people that balance family and work. And so this is a message and a recommendation. Try to find your mentors. They might not be your supervisor. It might be a completely different person. And they will care definitely about your progression. A little bit about my personal strategy for early career academics. All of you probably recognize this. And maybe it's almost time for lunch, and all of you are thinking, maybe I want to have a pizza. But in a pizza, everyone has a different taste. And sometimes you like some ingredients, and some likes you hate other ingredients. And I saw academia in this way. And I wanted to be something special there. Because I knew, if you probably remember a couple of minutes ago, I was talking about this small fish in a big sea. I was thinking of myself of being one small ingredient in this field of open innovation, but without that special ingredient, the pizza cannot be perfect. So try to find what can you do very well, and what is that is missing in that magical or mystical field of research. Maybe nowadays people talk about ecosystems, people talk about digitalization, sustainability. That's the pizza. But what do you want to be in that pizza? Do you want to do, I know Leonardo is doing something on uncertainty and ecosystem, so he might be the tomato. And if you're a small scholar or young scholar, maybe you want to be a smaller ingredient, but you want to be that necessary ingredient of that pizza. And some recommendations to do this is really identify why you really want to do, why are you really interested in a certain topic, or what do you want to do? These are two different approaches. Why is a bigger reason? Because I want to help organizations to be better. Because in my view, I wanted them to be more successful so that they can train people, they can hire more people, and that will generate economic growth. And I saw the role of an intermediary as a broker of knowledge. But there are other people that also think about what do you want to do, and they think, okay, I want to get tenure, I want to get published, I want to get cited, and that's completely fine. But for you as an individual, try to decide what you want to do. Why do you want to do something, or what do you want to do? But have a clear vision. Then the next step is search for gaps in the literature. What is missing? What needs to be connected? And try to fill that gap. Don't be just completely empirical. Tell your ideas, or test your ideas with your mentors, because they will understand that you're in a maturation process. They will understand that you trust them enough to test all your failures. Then try at conferences, not only in Brazil, but also in other places. Try to test your ideas and see if they make sense, if they get attention of others. And then try these ideas with your heroes, because then they will be more critical, but they will also help you to push if they want to do. This is my last slide, and I've been looking for. I see an academic career, especially maybe for young and more senior academics, as a way of balancing different activities, because we are not only academics, we are fathers, we are friends, and we have a lot of things to do at the same time. So for me, the so the most important pillar, and this is at the bottom. So I've been thinking about how to put this together, but for me, the groundstone will be work and non-work related aspects. So learning how to balance your work, dedicate the time that you need for that, but don't forget that non-work related activities are equally important. Being with the family, being with the friends, enjoying life. If you have that strong settle, if you're happy with that, you will definitely avoid stress, you will definitely avoid frustration, negativity. That's very necessary for me. The next step is obviously another thing that you need to do to balance is research. How much research can I do? I know scholars that say that they are writing 10 papers at the same time, but probably that might be for more seniors. I find that very challenging. Try to commit to certain number of papers, try to do them well, don't overcommit, because the moment you're committing to something, you are taking time from something else that you have already committed, and might be even your family. The next thing is that you also need to balance your teaching activities here. How much teaching can you accept? At least in Sweden, we have a model where you are assigned a number of hours, and you can pay out these hours with your research funding. Sometimes people overcommit to teaching. It's not bad if you do it. You have also, as academics, we have to do it, but you also need to understand how much should I be doing, and how much is good, how much is bad of teaching activities. Too much will probably take time from your research, your life. Too little will detach you from the students and from reality. Another stone that I think is important is outreach, as I've been mentioning before. Trying to get in contact with companies, with organizations, trying to hear what they believe is important. Try to understand how do they rationalize, how do they operate. And sometimes you don't need to do research or outreach to do research. It's really trying to go to attend some conferences. Last year I went to a conference called Slash, which is a conference for entrepreneurs. And at that conference, I have learned a lot. And I called it, once the conference finished and I went back to my university, I said, okay, this was a conference that helped me to disrupt my thinking and my view of the world. And sometimes we need that. I haven't learned anything from a paper, but I have learned more than attending an academic conference, because my thinking and my way of looking at how companies are collaborating was completely disrupted in a positive sense. Moving on. We need to do some of these university administrations, as I mentioned before, we're requested to do, but don't overcommit to that. If you do too much again, you will be disrupting these very nice allocated stones. And finally, it's obviously international and national networks and friends. They will help you to see the life and the joy in academia. They will probably help you to understand why you are doing what you're doing. They will value your insights. They will value your wisdom. They will seek you to have some insights. They will. I mean, you will notice that they will come to the things that you organize. They will cheer you up when you're down. They will do many things, and I think that is important. But as you can imagine, we need to balance all or counterbalance these multiple blocks of activities. So when you're doing what we are doing, think about all of these dimensions and even more. So this is just some initial thoughts. Maybe there are even more stones to think in the future. And that's my last slide for today. And I will now move to Magdalena.
Yes, let's move to Magdalena. Everyone know. Oh, sorry. Uh, just to let everyone know, we are live. The address is www.iea.usp.br/ao-vivo. We are recording. You can send the questions in English or in Portuguese. The email please email us at iea.responde@usp.br. Now I'm so glad to have you here, Magdalena. I was born in a region where everyone is not able to speak clearly in Portuguese, but I don't know how to say your surname properly.
Markowska.
Markowska, you know? Wow. Magdalena, I'm so glad to have you here and to hear your experiencing in your journey. Please.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure. It's also really exciting to be here, and I really think that being able to engage in academic career is a way to also fulfill your own dreams. So I'm originally Polish. I was born and raised in Poland. I did my studies there. I decided pretty early on that languages were important and that I wanted to also get some international experience. So basically, as a student, I went for a year of exchange to Germany. When I finished the studies, I worked a little for a big telecom company. And then within that company, I actually moved to Germany, to the headquarters, to work there with that company. And then I moved to UK within the same company to get a little bit more exposure, this international exposure. I think this is something which is really great because it really opens your mind, and it opens your mind in a way that you realize that the way you think, it's not the only way to think, and that others may think differently, and that it's equally good way of thinking. So I think this also opens your mind for questioning things taken for granted. And I think this is where I got my ideas about my research and what I want to do in my research. So basically, asking questions that we often don't ask. So, for instance, one of my current research is looking at why Swedish women start businesses after becoming mother, something that's very counterintuitive given our welfare system. So, finishing off my international experience in the business, I realized that academic career was something that I would like to try. I always was inclined to kind of search for questions and for answers. And when I got the opportunity to join Jönköping University in Sweden, I did it. So I did my PhD in Sweden. I also used that time to actually build networks, and I spent some time in the Strathclyde Business School in Glasgow, which I thought was really great experience. After my PhD, I decided that I needed to change the scene. I needed to learn something new, so I decided to do a postdoc in Spain at the Business School in a beautiful Barcelona. So what I want to say is that we are able to design where we live and how we live, and the choices we make ourselves, for us, right? So having finished the postdoc, I got an opportunity, and I think the topic of today is building careers in entrepreneurship and innovation. And entrepreneurship is about spotting, identifying, or creating opportunities and bringing them to the market. And I think, a lot what we do is exactly that. So I had this opportunity to come back to Sweden, to Jönköping. I got a 3-year scholarship to do research, almost 100%. And I thought there was no better way if I wanted to be able to publish. A research scholarship was the best option. So as you can make from my discussion so far, it's actually that a lot of research is about me-search. And this is something that my former supervisor, Professor Johan Wiklund, used to say, that we are best at doing what we care about. So this is also what Melissa Cardon talks a lot about, having the passion, recognizing what is the passion, right? If we are passionate about something and we engage in it, we can be persistent. We can be persistent and we don't get tired of doing what we love doing. So for me, my research is a me search. It's a search of who I am, what I'm interested in, and where I want to get, and how I can get there. So it's really trying to find this way and trying to understand, what do I care about? What values are important for me? And if what I care about and the values that are important for me are also values that might be important for others, it's even better, right? Because then we have an engaged career and hopefully we produce research that's actually relevant to more than myself. So as I noted before, I really believe that we academics, we are very much like entrepreneurs because we make a lot of decisions under uncertainty. When we engage in writing applications for research, we don't know the outcomes. We don't know if we get the funding. We don't know whether we get actually the partners that we would like to work with. They might always say no. We don't know whether people would want to participate in the research. So there is a lot of uncertainty, and there is also competition because maybe somebody else, somewhere else is working on exactly the same question and maybe he or she will get to the journal first, right? A lot of uncertainty, and all of that uncertainty because we want to create value. We want to create value, we want to create new knowledge, we want to resolve questions that bother us, that bother the society. We want to deliver that value, that new knowledge in the best possible ways. And for the moment, one is teaching, the other one is research, and of course, all sorts of public engagement where we can actually share the outcomes of what we discover with others. And of course, we need to capture value of what we have created because we need to make our careers meaningful, at least for ourselves, but hopefully also to our family and to the society. And a meaningful career, in my mind, means a career that provides some value added to others. So for me, this is really important that we are able to create value, we are able to deliver it in different ways to different audiences, because it's not always that everyone is interested in what we do. But we have to identify the right audiences. A colleague of mine used to say that being in academia is like being in a cocktail party. you need to choose which table you want to join, which conversation you want to join. And so I think that this is really important. Making choices, so decision making is really important in where do I want to engage. Exactly as Henry was saying that, you know, if you commit to one thing, you might not be able to commit to another thing. So we have to make choices, because by choosing your table, for instance, Leonardo, I can't join another table. So I have to make a decision, and hopefully the decision I'm making are good. And as we talked earlier this week, there are many different heuristics about how we can go about it, right? So we can identify the heroes, the mentors Henry was talking about. We can identify maybe other topics that we are really interested in, that we would like to contribute to, or that we would like to learn from. Because a lot of research in our field is actually coming from borrowing from other areas, right? We borrow so much in entrepreneurship from psychology, we learn from sociology, we also look into economics, right? So we have different conversations that we can be engaged with, and hopefully we can make a nice after party, right? So this is important, and this is why I think that as academics, we are privileged. We are really privileged because we have autonomy, similar autonomy that most of the entrepreneurs have, because we can choose the topics, the theories, the methods that we want to use to pursue the research and the questions that bother us. So I think academics are entrepreneurs, but we need to really create our own path. We need to create our own path by making right choices and being able to identify the gaps, or being able to spot a phenomenon or a trend that's emerging and trying to explore might be a good way to find your path. As long as you follow what you care about, as long as there is a passion, or if there is something that you really are interested in, I think you will be able to find a way to create value that's relevant not only to you. So this is my biggest advice, if I can say so, that look inside of you, try to think what you care about, try to think what's important for you and why is it important. If we can understand why, we can really push ourselves and motivate ourselves to really engage in that activity, in pursuit of that particular line of research. So create your own path. If you really love sitting in statistics and playing with numbers, ask a question that you can answer with those methods. If you are really interested in being out there and talking to people, ask a question that you can answer by engaging with different people. If you are interested in thinking about the future, ask a question in that direction. If you are a lover of history, find a question that you can answer by searching into history, into the books, into the records, archives, whatever it is. So find something that's relevant for you and go for it. Now, this is my strategy. So as you can see, Henry was talking about this very strategic moves. Do this, do that. Don't forget about this. And this is one strategy. I follow a very different strategy to what Henry follows. And I really believe that, life is not all pink. Sometimes life gives us lemons, sour lemons. Let's not complain about it. Let's make lemonade. Let's do with what we have. Let's be resourceful with what we have. let's try to find how to turn our constraint into our strength. And I think this is a strategy I have been following. I have applied for a number of funding. I have sometimes been successful, sometimes I have not been successful. I have applied for a number of jobs. Some I got, some I didn't. I maybe might have been sad for a little while that I didn't get the job that I thought was perfect for me, and I was thinking, why the hell didn't I get it, right? It was made for me. I felt that way. But then you sleep over, you think about it, you reflect, and you think, no, things happen for a reason. And if I didn't get it, is because if the life closes one door, it opens another window. So I really believe that we need to search for our opportunities. We have to create our opportunities. We have to, if we want to be happy, if we want to be fulfilled. So this is where I agree totally with what Henry was saying. I think this is what we have to be doing. So work with what we have and create more opportunities for ourselves. So that would be my advice. And following your heart is the best way to be happy, to have a career that you enjoy. I'm not saying I'm not frustrated at times, I'm not overworked, I don't have time for the family, but I'm doing something that I really care and that I feel passionate about. So let's make them lemonade. And of course, something happens for a reason, right? And if you care about something, you go all the way to achieve it. And so both Henry and I, we enjoy our family, we enjoy traveling, we enjoy working, we enjoy doing research. So we find ways how we can combine all of that, how we can balance the life, the non-work with work, how we can make the best of what's given to us.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Now is the time for questions answers. As you can see, you have Magdalena and Henry. They bring two adorable children with us. That's why they are sometimes presenting, sometimes take care of them. I met Henry at the business department corridor a couple of years ago. He was preparing a class for our department, and we started to discussing and try to find a common interest. And finally, we get an inspiration to perhaps work in some opportunities. And I think the most important word in the academy is meetings, building networks. And also, I was then visited University of Cambridge this year, and I was discussing with Elizabeth Garzen. Now she's on retirement, and we were discussing about the career development. She told me, your problem, Leo, is basically you are only think about papers. Papers is not the purpose of being academics. The purpose is to engage in great ideas within very smart people. Enjoy this path. And then I decided to rethink my career. My point is start to have these talks, Magdalena. Exactly, try to illuminate, to shed light on these non-saying aspects about our career, because sometimes we are so oriented to research publications, and I think sometimes we are misleading by these expressions. When you think the final reaction, and then I go back to a question to you. I was in Cambridge the first time doing my PhD time. I was a little bit frustrated because I just felt the pressure to find a topic, attract the interest from the people. And then I attended to a conference for first year PhD students, and a colleague of mine presented a work. He was a lawyer, and he was trying to identify the true value of technologies. I thought, this is impossible. And I commented this to my advisor at that time, Elizabeth Gosling. She told me, Leonardo, you have to learn. You are here in Cambridge, and here in Cambridge, nobody tells to no one something is impossible. And I have to admit to myself, I'm saying this is not possible for me all the time. I'm create the barriers for my own development by saying this is not possible for me. And I understood that, and I tried to bring this understanding for my career development at the USP now. To say to my students is, we don't know if this is possible or not, let's try together. Let's take risk as academics, and let's discuss with them, other colleagues, what they think about what we're doing. And make more personal the development. As entrepreneurs, I fully agree with you, and academics are very similar to entrepreneurs. They are engaged in a very uncertain endeavor, and make it very personal as well. Amy is enjoying us now. I will start a question for you, Magdalena. When and why you decide to engage in the research about women is also related when you become a mother. That's change your perception, that's change your priorities, and how that topic became relevant to you.
I think, in part, becoming a mother did play some role, but I actually started talking about this idea a little before we planned becoming parents. As a matter of fact, I got this idea when I attended a writing workshop with Professor Andy van der Ven, and we were working and trying to develop ideas about how to start the papers, how to tell the stories that we want to tell. And I realized that I have observed that a lot of women start businesses, but they start businesses after they have become mothers. And I started to wonder, and I started to read the literature. What is it about the fact that women, after becoming mothers, have the courage, because that's how I have seen it, have the courage to become entrepreneurs? And this is where I started to engage in discussions with some colleagues who turned out have had similar ideas or similar observations. And so we got together with Lucia Naldi, professor also at JIBS, and with Professor Helenal, also at Jönköping. And this is where we have discussed that, in fact, this seems to be a new phenomenon, and this is something that was not very kind of logical in our context, in the Swedish context. So we have decided to write an application and to combine a study of the population of Swedish women with also some interview studies about them. So I think it was a combination. It was this kind of inquisitive mind of looking around what's happening and looking for trends, looking for, interesting observations. But also, it coincided with the fact that we started a family.
Now, is Henry? A question for you. Henry, during our first collaboration, I learned something very interesting from you. I never told you about this, but you are always engaging people and ask them about their opinion and feedback. This is not really common here in Brazil. At my department, it's very rare. You ask for colleagues, what do you think about my topic? What do you think about my research? This piece of research. And this was for me a kind of surprising way to address research, and also very provocative in my way. And when you decide to adopt such approach for your personal career development, and I know you are in an open innovation field, but when you decide to become an open innovation academic researcher?
This is actually, is this one working? Yeah. Let's move to this one. This is the first time I'm also surprised that you're saying this, because I'm also surprised that I'm doing that. It's unconscious. It's probably natural then that I tend to that I ask you. Well, I'd ask you because I know you know the topic, and know you can give me some useful feedback. I know that you're open. It's also about the recipient. I think it's probably if we study the theory of communication. I did a small book that I actually read, and my mentor suggest me. Communication goes both ways, and it's not only about the recipient, but it's not only about the sender, but it's also about the recipient, and it goes back. And in that case, I think that I felt that you were that person. So this is, I think there are two things to learn, and it's superficial. And before I forget them, I say it's like it's important for you as a person to ask and validate your ideas. I tend to do that. The same thing always with Magdalena. For obvious reasons, we tend to talk too much about work. But I also, well, I'm talking with you, and I try to test ideas continuously. But the second important thing is obviously for all of us who are not normally asking others, is to be able to hear. So if you don't talk, at least hear and then give feedback. That will be one of the message. And I don't believe that I can provide, and so always I can come up with the perfect model from the beginning. So I need to validate continuously with others.
Yeah, no, that's the most surprise aspect, because as teachers and researchers in innovation entrepreneurship, we encourage students and practitioners to test and validate their ideas. But sometimes we don't encourage our students and ourselves to test and validate our own ideas. That's why I was surprised, and you told me, let's email in that time, let's email the editor from this journal and ask them for feedback before to submit the paper. And I thought, yeah, it's true. You have some time is to ask people about their opinion and try to validate before to engage in such deeper, in difficult endeavors. That's why I thought this very fascinating.
Thank you.
Let's open for some questions. Just let you know, please tell your name, institutions.
So, thank you for your presentation. I'm Vinicius Brazil. I'm finishing my PhD at the Production Engineering Department. I work Flanado in innovation, radical innovation. And I'd like to ask a bit more about this phase. I mean, when you are finishing your PhD, how did you plan the next steps? I mean, it's a phase with a lot of uncertainties. I also work for a innovation management consultancy. And how to make these choices, how to build a research pipeline, to choose the papers you want to engage in, or the places you want to try to work for. And especially if you do research with companies, how did you design a program or something like that to engage companies to keep close and to collect data, especially if you do qualitative research, you need to keep them close to you. So this confusing phase after the PhD, I would like to listen a bit from you, and how did you manage it?
Yeah.
Thank
So if I can start, well, in Sweden, typically the advice you get is focus on finishing your thesis, you will think about the job later. Well, I didn't listen. For me, coming from Poland, where you have to take care of yourself and you don't trust that the system will take care of you, I basically felt responsible for making sure that my career is going in the right direction. So about a year before I was finishing, I have had prepared my documents, my CV, my teaching portfolio, and I have started screening the market where there were opportunities. I started to really think about what is it that I would like to do next in terms of, are there any particular people that I would like to work with, or are there any particular places that I would like to be for a number of reasons. It can be for your family reasons, but it might be also because you want the environment. As a freshly defended PhD, you still need an environment that encourages you and helps you develop. So you want people around you that will help you, right? So I was really on the lookout on what I can do, where I want to go. I did a number of interviews, and I would strongly encourage you to start relatively early in this last months before your defense. And it's good if you can start maybe not with the one that you desire most. That's what most people say, so that you can practice a little before. In terms of pipeline, I would think that it's always good when you go for the interviews to show that you have working papers that are written, maybe the one or two that are submitted to a journal but under review, because the organization that is going to hire you, they want to see that relatively soon you might bring them a publication, right? So be smart about it. Don't push to, on one hand, it's good to have something published by the time you finish, but it's also equally worthy to have something under review, because this signals to your potential employer they might get the publication pretty soon, right? Strategy that I didn't follow, but I would recommend based on my kind of not the best steps I've done, I would say try to differentiate. So have one or two papers that you strive really high to a very good journal where you think your contribution is great, but have also something in the lower tier journals, so that that you target towards lower tier journals, because in the end you want to signal two things. You want to signal that you have potential, but you also want to signal that you are capable of getting to the meta, to the finish line, right? And by having something published, even if it's lower tier, you'll signal exactly that you get to the finish. You know how to get to the finish line. By having something under review in a high tier journal, you signal that you have high potential.
Yeah, I can use probably this one. I don't probably have more suggestions than what Magda has. I think my strategy, because maybe of my supervisor, or maybe not, it was really to publish in top journals, the best papers that I had, but that's also very risky. You might fail, and if you fail with everything. So it's like putting everything on stake. But I would like to reflect on your second question, which I think is very challenging when you are doing qualitative research, which you say, okay, it's about getting access to companies, and knowing what they really want, and knowing or offering them something that they want, and that is, I think, there are two possible scenarios. There is the ideal that you have done a very nice interview questions. You go there, just email them, and they say yes. Please come. We will offer you all the employees, and you can talk to all of them. That is maybe very unlikely and to happen, and it's very challenging. Then what I have done is really, I have learned first from my mentors and supervisors on how to talk with the companies, how to approach them with an opportunity to do research, because there are like they use strategies such as like we as independent researchers can give you a fair assessment of your activities because we're not biased by the internal dynamics and internal firm dynamics. Another one is asking them, okay, how could I help you to investigate what you're interested in? What is creating your troubles? And then obviously, based on what they tell you, also match that to what you're interested in your research. Because you don't want to do research for free for the companies, but they won't give you access if you don't do something for them. So I think a win situation doesn't work. So when you as researchers win and they don't win anything, I'm not saying losing, but I'm saying like they don't win anything, then sometimes the collaboration did not succeed. And you don't start a collaboration. When you look for win-win scenarios, they work. Many years ago, back in 2010, again, my supervisor, Wim van Haberbeck, got access to all the data set from Philips research projects. But they wanted to know really if open innovation could help them speed up their innovation projects, generate more money, and generate more technology transfers. And we were like, okay, maybe we can do that econometrically, but we want to get access to, we want to be able to publish based on your results. And so that was an excellent scenario of win-win situations. Now what I'm doing, and I give some speeches here, it was about preparing some information, some analysis using computers, computing. You think about computerized social analysis, and then with those insights, you go to the companies and say, "Okay, I'm not entering the field with a white piece of paper. I'm entering this field with some knowledge about what you and your competitors are doing, and this is public information. So I would like to do some sort of, I would like to validate my preliminary analysis of your activities." So that is something I believe might also get the interest of the company, saying, okay, this person know what we do from all the available information. Maybe it will be good for us and for them to learn something new. And also just about the academic job market, going back a little bit to what Magda was saying, I know that at least in the top business schools, normally from the US, you have to send your application to more than 50 different universities, and maybe you get lucky and one of them wants to hire you. And if you're lucky, also 10 of them might like to have an interview with you. I've been going through that process back in 2011, and yeah, that's how it works. You need to submit, you need to try it as many as you want. You are not the only one looking for a job. There are many, and sometimes it might be internationally. But you have to try. And don't just try normally to be assistant professor. At least in Europe, they have a postdoc. And a postdoc is a good period to do research, because normally it's difficult enough to finish a thesis. Then you have these 2 years of research time to mature and to advance your research articles, and to bring them, and probably to have them in a very good journal to be able to publish that. And that was my case. So by the moment I finished my PhD, I had a very, very low-key publication. But during my PhD, I got 2 other top publications, and then I was also building my new research portfolio.
Okay, we approached the end of the presentation. Our time is run out. I'd like to say many thank you for being here. You are very generous for sharing your experience, your thoughts, your advice with the audience. And also, we are really glad to talk to you personally in the approach and understand more your career development. To português now, eu quero começar agradecendo a quem nos ajudou prontamente a organizar esse evento. Quero agradecer 1000 vezes a Cristiane por nos ajudar aqui no observatório. Ela respondeu educadamente, carinhosamente os nossos pedidos para organizar, está aqui presente, nos ajudando, iluminando nesse dia. Quero também agradecer profundamente ao IEA, falo aqui pessoalmente ao Jorge e ao Sérgio, que estão sempre nos conduzindo, nos filmando e nos dirigindo. Quero também agradecer toda a infraestrutura de apoio ao IEA. E, por fim, quero dizer um grande obrigado aos que estão aqui presentes, ao Mateus e à Sofia também, pelo maravilhoso comportamento, e a Alejandra, que se dedicou a estar perto da Sofia e brincar com ela durante esse período. Esse é um dos vídeos que nós estamos preparando sobre Sharing Path. Espero vê-los em outras ocasiões, seja onde você estiver, seja em que momento você estiver da sua carreira. Até mais.